Good morning, children. Welcome back. Today we are going to continue with chapter number 4, the fourth part or the fourth session, features in Microsoft Word 2013. Column formatting. The text in Word can also be formatted in such a way so that it appears in columns just the way it appears in newspapers. We have all seen newspapers. See this newspaper cutting? The text is divided into columns. This we can apply to our documents also. Let's see how. Now follow the steps below. Step number 1, select the text that has to be displayed in columns. You have to select the text first. Step number 2, click on the page layout tab. Step number 3, click on the columns option in the page setup group. A drop down list appears. And step number 4, click and choose the desired number of columns. You see. This is your step number 1. The text is selected. Step number 2 is page layout tab. You have to click on it. Step number 3 is this columns option in the page setup group. This is the drop down list. And step number 4, you have to choose any one of this columns option. Here 2 is chosen. Now there are some more column formatting options. To specify more column formatting options, opens the columns dialog box. Follow the steps below. Step number 1, click on more columns option in the columns drop down list. In the columns dialog box appears. Step number 2, specify the number of columns in the presets section or enter a number in the number of columns. So either there are some preset columns buttons are there in the columns dialog box. You can click that, or you can enter the number of columns in the number of column box. Step number 3, click on equal column width checkbox. If you want the columns of equal width, if you want every column will be of equal width, you can click on that checkbox. Otherwise, enter the width for every column. So otherwise, you have to give the width for every column separately. Step number 4. You have to click between the line between checkbox for inserting a line between the columns. If you want to, you see sometimes a vertical line is drawn between columns in newspapers. You can also do that by click the line between checkbox. Step number 5, finally click on OK. The selected text will display in columns. Now let us see here. Your step number 1, under that column option, the last option is more column. Click on that. This is your step number 1. As you do, the column dialog box opens. This is your columns dialog box. So either you can, these are the presets of the columns. 1 is the default one, 2, 3, left, right. So you can choose either of these presets of the columns, this format, or in this number of columns spin box, you can type or set the number of columns here. Okay. Step number 3, equal column width. If this checkbox is ticked out, you don't have to give column width for every column. If this is not ticked out, you have to specify the column width in inches for every column separately. And here the spacing between columns. How much space you want. Here default is given 0.5 inches. You can increase or decrease that. Step number 4, line between columns. If you want a vertical line between columns, see in the preview box. Vertical line if you want, tick this one, otherwise not. And finally, step number 5, when everything is done, you click on the OK button. Now the column formatted document. Now let us see practically what we have learned today. Columns. So in newspapers we have seen that the text is divided into columns. That also we can do here. So here the text is very less. So let's make the text a little bit bigger. Let's copy this text first at least 2 times, say 3 times. Now select the text, selected. Now in the page layout tab is already selected. Here is a page setup group. Here is a column button. So click on this column button. Different types of columns settings are there. So let's click it 2. So the text will be divided into 2 columns. Now if you want to have more column setting options, where you can give vertical line in between columns. You have seen in newspaper that sometimes there is a vertical line in between the column. So how you can give some columns are of different sizes. Here both the columns are the same sizes. All these things you are going to see in the columns dialog box. So the more columns option, where first select the text which you want to be in column. Then again the page layout tab, here is the columns button. Now go to the last option, more columns option. Clear? Click it here. Here is a columns dialog box. So there are presets of the different types of column. 1 means the default one, single column. 2 column is right now selected. 3, then left, right, left small, right small. These are the preset. If you don't want this, if you want to have your own, then you can give the number of columns here or select it here like this. Okay. And here this option is equal column width, means all the columns will be of equal sizes. If you wish, you can take it off. Then you have to give different columns separately, the sizes between the columns you have to give it. Now spacing is the space between columns. Default is 0.5 inch, half inch. You can make it smaller, bigger, your choice. Now sometimes you see, as I told you in newspapers, there is some vertical line in between the columns. How to give that? Click this option. So line between, see, in the preview it is given. Now click on OK. Now see your text is having 3 columns of equal sizes with vertical lines in between. Now if you wish to have different sized columns, that also you can do. So let's select the text here. Okay. And again columns, more columns option. Now you just put it off, equal column width. Now you can increase your column width according to your choice. Others column will be adjusted according to this. Okay. So the leftmost column is the smallest width, then middle one is little bit, and the rightmost is the greater one. Now let's give space in between columns, so 0.2 inch. Okay. Now 3 columns are of 3 different widths with space in between and vertical lines and all that. Students, that's all for today. Hope you have understood. Practice in your computer or device. Until the next class, until the next video, it's goodbye and happy learning.